We are here with Mike Whiteman. And so Chris Gorfus and I, Tony Holler, will be conducting the podcast. We don't know how long it's going to last. Mike is one of, you're not the most unique TFC person we've ever had, because actually, this is a hell of a story. We actually had a bronze medalist Olympic synchronized swimmer once. So in terms of being out there, soccer is not quite out there as much as synchronized swimming is to football and track, but it is really cool that we're bringing in somebody with a soccer background. You're the first soccer representative and all that stuff. And with that said, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I hope I do not disappoint the soccer community then, and represent them well. So I have been with the Riverhounds organization. I'm the director of sports performance, the strength and conditioning coach for all intents and purposes for about the past decade. And it's a really unique structure because I work from the youth academy all the way up to the pro team. So as you can imagine, it's quite the continuum of abilities, talents, motor skills. All of those sorts of issues kind of arise, as we kind of work from, an 8-year-old to a professional with a contract. And the league that we play in, USL Championship, is analogous to essentially AAA baseball. However, with the rise of quality in American soccer and the growth of the sport here nationally, the contracts are getting big. Before, if you were an ex-Division I player, literally just a couple years ago, if you were an ex-Division I player of any sort of decent ability level, you probably could play in our league. Now, if you don't have overseas or national team experience, you're not sniffing the field. And the contracts are now commensurate too. So there's big boy money, and there is a lot more at stake, within our league. So again, quite the continuum now from the capabilities of the pros and the youth. And just to blow everyone's mind a little bit, because of the long-term development of our youth system, I'll have an athlete for quite some time. They're far more capable physically by the time they're 12 than most of our free agents ever will dream to be, as you can probably imagine if you just kind of think that through logically a little bit. But that's it. So about 10 years at the club. My primary responsibility is to the academy, just because that's a beast. That is an absolute beast. We're talking 600, 700, 800 kids. If you want to throw in we have a satellite academy out in our eastern suburbs here that I kind of go back and forth between. I assist with them as well too. Yeah, you're talking about at least 750 kids. So,
what are like the biggest groups you're ever working with at one time?
I am used to kind of working with, when we do our team training, sometimes I wind up dealing with 3 or 4 teams concurrently. So I'll have up to like 100 kids sometimes. So that's honestly, in the beginning, you can imagine that would be difficult, but it's forced me to be resourceful and really organize and become a better coach.
Yeah, you're kind of like a track coach. I always say that I coach groups. I very seldom do one-on-one coaching,
right.
But there is an art to getting 50 kids
to still get the intent and still get the quality, because those are the 2 big words I think that I think I would want to leave people with is, regardless of group size, this is not babysitting. This is, I want a certain quality and I'm going to get it. And I'm going to do it tastefully, with class and never yell, never raise my voice, because you said it earlier too. I loved it when I just came on. I teach. I think of myself more as a teacher than a coach. So I am there to deliver a lesson, right, for the evening. And then, I'm all about, I like to use this word particularly with my youth athletes, slow cooking the process, because there truly is no rush. So there's no reason for me, I always tell the parents, because we have this issue sometimes, that the parents are worse than the kids when we start getting into these overachieving types, and recruiting and going to this showcase and getting in front of this coach. I'm like, they're 13, they're 14. I promise you, it doesn't matter now. We need to set them up, for things that are sustainable. So when it matters, they're more than ready to go. Now,
so let me stop you right there. I got a question for you. Soccer, I think, is unique, especially when you're comparing with, especially track, where you can just line kids up and parents aren't normally a thing.
Right.
How do you deal with that, where you're explaining, especially in soccer, which in my opinion, soccer is probably the least developed of any group of athletes. They spend the least amount of time working on athletic ability.
Right.
And you have to explain to the parents why, I'm not sure the dynamics of your club, but why they're taking time to work on this athletic stuff. Because I'm sure you have parents that come in and scream at you about, you have no idea what you're doing. And
Chris, that's a great question. And that's a battle I had to fight for years initially.
What was an early response that you would give to someone? How do you convince a soccer parent, who are probably just as crazy, maybe a little bit more crazier than most other club sports, because they're used to paying a lot of money in traveling?
Yes. So that was the thing. They wanted, specificity was the game. It was like you play.
So what was your response to them? How do you explain that to them, that speed is important, when most people really don't get it? Because most people have never been close to a professional athlete to see how fast they go.
Well, so the important thing early, with them was, I honestly, Chris, no amount of words were going to really kind of resonate. They just needed to experience, and they needed to see results quickly from me, right? So they, very pragmatically, I needed to be able to get them to have their son or daughter, little Timmy or little Susie, looking. And honestly, and here's the thing, right? We get hung up, like, we're track guys and we like objective data, right? Everyone here in the room, I'd imagine, they want to quantify things. Right. What I found early is they don't care. All the perception becomes quickly reality with the parents. If 2 weeks later, their kid's on the field and it looks, or they feel like they're faster, I'm their best friend. Boom, got it, right? That was it. So I knew, initially I just said, listen, give me a couple weeks here. Because, when you have someone green, as well as I do, who has never experienced it at all, there's, typically egregious flaws you can kind of address pretty quickly, to make significant changes. Give me a couple weeks, boom, you're going to start to see some, noticeable good qualities arising on the field when they play. And let's give it a little bit longer. And I guess I delivered on my end. So it wasn't really words, it was more actions than anything. If that answers your question.
And how do you sell it to your kids? Because soccer players don't normally think, I really need to work on my speed.
No, it was easier on the kids. And in the beginning, it was easy on the kids because it was different. These kids are, Chris, by the time they're 12, I'm fighting burnout, and I provide something that is different. It's funny. if you get them young, they love getting into the gym. They love sprinting. They love leaping, and they love, particularly when they're really young, competing, right? And they like competing in anything, foot races, times, measured jumps, you know, like broad jump. Like, hey, if I put down a measuring tape, people lose their mind. That was it. I had no problem convincing the kids. That was easy. All right, you want to get stronger? I bet. Yeah, we're gonna do this. We're going to back squat X amount of weight next week, right? Just simple progressive overload. Hey, you're slightly more adapted. Can we do a little more? Right? Like, it's that simple. It's just like the competitive nature of these young kids. That was easy. That was the easy part. And again, it was so different because it wasn't a soccer ball, because a lot of these kids and it's just, let's actually expand this beyond soccer, AAU culture, right? Basketball, whatever, it's similar. It's honestly the same thing, because I saw a tweet earlier, I think maybe Tony last night, about, 90% of good training is exactly the same. Boom, exactly. We're training, I'm training athletes first. There's maybe like a little bit of 10, like there is limited difference when we start talking about maybe like, trying to capitalize on different like energy systems a little bit with the athletes. And then for my older ones who are getting ready to either go to college, in college, or the pros, maybe a little bit of like joint angle, velocity, specificity, but that's it. Everything else is the same. You're sprinting, you're leaping, you're jumping, and we're going to, stick to the meat and potatoes, so to speak. But the kids, honestly, they just were, it's refreshing for them. And I get that comment all the time now, still from parents, that they just love it because it's different. It gets them off the ball. They're on the ball 7 days a week. They're training, they're practicing, they're traveling, and just different. was a breath of fresh air for them.
Now, I would think, as I watched your, I probably spent over 3 hours with your presentation today, so I'm taking notes, and I kept thinking to myself, if there was ever a feed the cats type of program for soccer, it would be what you do. I mean, because you seem to be the antithesis,
right,
of traditional soccer training, and could you describe what a traditional training system would look like compared to yours?
Yeah, so it is in my experience that when we're looking at what you would consider traditional, you're going to look at a lot of distance type work. When you start talking about developing soccer on other programs, you're going to think fitness. The first thing that leaps into mind is fitness, and that's going to be addressed kind of in my estimation the wrong way. They're going to be doing a lot of slow, steady state type cardio. I think some have now, I don't want to say evolved, because I think evolve kind of connotes that it's like making a good progress. So you'll see like a lot of eclectic, like I'll say like eclectic junk circuits that have no real, but then they'll be like, oh, well, we're not exacerbating overuse by having them run. Okay, but still, what are you accomplishing? What is the purpose of your CrossFit-esque circuit? Right? You know what I mean? Like, please give me the insight. I mean, that's all I care. Like, there's more than one way to go about doing this, but just give me a reason. Like, it's like it appears that there aren't any reasons, and they're just doing random stuff, and okay, yeah, it's great. So you're preserving them from overuse, but it's fitness and it's cardio, it's all aerobic based, right? Which is, admittedly, if you look at energy system, requirements, a lot of walking, a lot of jogging. If you look at how the game breaks down, so you need a robust aerobic base, and essentially anything does that. And good technical training, like the training that the coaches do, that should encapsulate most of that. So I don't need to beat a dead horse when they're with me. That, you know, most training, they're going to have them again do this steady state, maybe some circuiting if they're slightly more progressive than most, if we want to say that. I'm the opposite. I focus on raising the ceiling, pure max outputs. So maximal sprinting, maximal leaping, and heavy, high intensity, low volume lifts, explosive, and again, keep raising the ceiling.
I did a soccer podcast with Joel Reinhardt, S&C guy at UMass.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some real interesting catapult statistics, and they wanted my take on it. And one of them is the fact that 99% of a soccer match is done at 50% of max speed or less. Right. 99%.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which would mean that's 99% aerobic. And another fact was that they're going to cover 9 miles in a college soccer game. And the third thing is most people will not approach their max speed even in their 1% where they go.
No, right. Because
it's acceleration. Right. And so they asked me, somebody that knows nothing about soccer, what should we be training? And my answer was, describe the best soccer player on the team. What are the qualities that that best soccer player has? And they said, explosive, fast. You know, they described all the things that soccer is not.
Right.
And so my point being, it would be intuitive for a soccer trainer to say, we are going to train like a cross-country team.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a lot of accelerations.
Right.
So how would you answer that conundrum?
Yeah. So the problem with that is you're leaving out exposure to the most potent athletic thing that we can do for anyone, and that's achieving maximum velocity, right? Doing this now long enough, and I think this, regardless, again, sport, as I started, working my way through and maturing as a strength and conditioning coach, I started to realize that it's not really about the exercises, it's about the stress that they create and the result. So exercises are merely just means to an end, and that most beautiful end is achieved through becoming a better sprinter, right? And achieving max velocity. So, and that's the other thing I love about having my athletes, becoming as proficient as a soccer player can. They're never going to be typically a full track athlete. Although I've been surprised with the development of some of my young ones, particularly because I am such a stickler. I will say this about myself, about positions and the quality at which they achieve. We can get into that maybe a little bit later, but max velocity retrofits backwards so well, right? You're not going to achieve higher velocities unless you're accelerating more efficiently, period. So when you start to realize, I have limited time with them. I want exercises that are going to deliver the greatest bang for the buck. nothing is going to beat sprinting from the standpoint that achieving maximum velocity, they must accelerate better. So it's going to solve the problem of acceleration right there. Also, too, nothing's going to prepare the soft tissues for that level of stress, like achieving maximum velocity too, because we know the amount of force and stress that they endure when an athlete starts getting up to top speed. No heavy squat, no heavy deadlift is going to mimic that. So there's another key note right there. So you're talking about acceleration, soft tissue prep, and you retweeted it earlier, and it was brilliant. The Nordics and the RDLs, and I used to think, well, in order to get them ready, we need to do our due diligence, and we need to make sure that they're doing all this eccentric loading and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But then I started realizing, what, we need that to supplement. Absolutely. Let's keep the strength in, let's keep the good quality strength in, but let's not lose sight of truly what's important. If you tastefully just honestly work them through skips, marches, and have them sprint subtly further and further, that's going to be the best preparation itself for the actual sprinting. And before you know it, they're ready to go. And then you get flying, right? So, like you said, nothing prepares an athlete for sprinting like sprinting, and truly max velocity. At the end of the day, I'll hang my hat on this, and I'll die on this hill. Is king, right, for a soccer athlete, and that checks off the most amount of boxes. Period.
You actually said that max velocity is like killing two birds with one stone.
Oh yeah,
because acceleration, will come up. Yeah, and I would even argue that sprinting is an extremely underrated strength drill as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. And again, because if you want to take a step back even further from acceleration, everyone kind of thinks of acceleration as change in velocity, but you have to initially overcome inertia too, right? So that explosive, propulsive, that's a beautiful thing, right? Oh man, that instantaneous bang right off the line. You've seen it in track walks, Tony. I see it on the field, that ability to overcome that static quality fast is a tough thing to really develop. And that's where again, retrofitting everything backwards, it has to improve.
Mike, we got a question here. Do you have any input on technical sessions with your sport coaches, or does the content of your technical sessions change what you do in your physical prep sessions?
Yes, absolutely. I am constantly working around what our technical staff is doing, and in collaboration with them. So I am very much so supplemental to what they do. So depending on their loading, that's going to dictate what I'm going to do with the athletes 100%. And as any strength and conditioning out there coach knows, your best laid plans often get quickly changed. We'll say, so you need to embrace agile periodization pretty quickly. One of my favorite works that I've read kind of recently here, so it's kind of reinforcing things that I already kind of do that. I have to kind of be able to kind of shift and move. But yes, I work around them. I'm not set in stone and have to do what's best. And I just try to fill in the gaps, so to speak. First and foremost, best ability is availability. So I need to keep them healthy so they can be on the field.
Now, it seems like your idea in training, well, I'll say my idea is that if I was training kids at an elite Division I track school,
right,
people always act like my style of coaching would have to change a great deal. And I think they're crazy as hell. It does not have to change a great deal.
No.
And And the great thing about, in my opinion, the way I train kids is I would train an 8-year-old the same way I would train an 18-year-old. Obviously, it will look different.
Right.
But the general concepts remain the same. And I know you have this wide range and you get to play the long game with young kids. But I love something you said that sprinting is super inoculant.
Yeah.
Soft tissue injuries. And you said something that I say often, that professionals are afraid to max speed train and then they want to go 5th gear in the game. And is that a problem in soccer?
Yes, huge problem. And again, it's that intuitive sort of, well, this guy's got a big contract, so let's put him in bubble wrap, and let's keep him safe for the game. But in doing so, they're not prepared for the game at all. So when they go to hit that NOS button, right, there we go. Now we have these soft tissue injuries, and you see a lot. It's very, I'd imagine similar to, track athletes, you see hamstrings, and you see, adductors. The adductors are huge in soccer just because of the ball striking. The way they kind of have to externally rotate through the hip, and then the way that, we bend and shape the ball too, like with curve. So there's a lot of lateral component to even what appears to be like a linear sort of kicking motion. So they're kind of shaping and bending around the ball to kind of get that result. So you see a lot of adductor type stuff as well. So, and obviously that's critical to sprinting when you start talking about groin and hip flexor for, actually accelerating the hip into flexion there.
Yeah, when people hear the word conditioning, I know I do. The thing that I think about is like, okay, we're going to get kids really tired.
Yeah.
In preparation to be fresh late in games.
Right.
And maybe we should start thinking of conditioning as being prepared to do the extreme things they have to do in a game, which may have nothing to do with fatigue at all.
Right.
It may have something to do with sprinting or explosive play.
Right. So that is my end goal. When I have the athletes train, I want them, my definition of work capacity is, can they handle more alactic explosive endeavors over time, right? So, and you'll see that, and it's funny because you don't realize it, because some of my athletes never, even when they're in season, they're super diligent about their maintenance work, so they never really fall off. But sometimes you have athletes that, like that still participate. The best example is, I won't see them for a couple months, high school age. So they'll leave the club, and then they'll go play high school, and they'll come back, and Tony, they'll struggle to get through my dynamic warm-up, and I'm just like, oh man, and then it's telling, because you're like, wow, like the bounce, the twitch, the reactivity, it's gone. And then you start to realize, like, okay, we need to, again, we have these alactic efforts on top of a broad aerobic base. We need to really build up your resilience to be able to withstand these alactic efforts, right? And we need to be able to do more and more and more and more of those. And the aerobic base is necessary just to reduce the recovery times between them. That's, I think a common misconception out there is that it allows you to do necessarily longer bouts. It's not, it's actually just reducing the recovery time in between them. So allowing you to do more and more, explosive things in a shorter time frame, we'll say. But that's what happens. And it's just kind of, it's actually not, really launching a rocket for, you know, for NASA. It's like, all right, if you expose them to this, and make sure that, and you've said it before too, I like this part with the way you've described it. Never let today ruin tomorrow, right? If you approach every session with that mindset, and you just get good quality, well, I promise you, just because of the resilience of the human body, right, and our ability to adapt, because that's what we do, we'll adapt and overcome. If you approach with that mindset and you give them 2 days and you come back and they see you again, they'll be able to handle another rep. They'll be able to handle another, like, it'll just organically happen. And that's just kind of having but honestly, it's a little bit of common sense, right? And then before you know it, you start, again, not falling prisoner to the moment, you know, and you see to some, like, and I was maybe a little bit at fault for this when I was young, because I am so gung-ho about chasing these max outputs, like squat PR, fly 10, whoa, 30, oh man, they're close. Can we get another rep? And now it's like, I've matured to the point where, like, no, we're good. we're good. We'll save that for the field where it matters. And I started chasing numbers as well too. But if you truly never let today ruin tomorrow, and you just have a little bit of class about what you're trying to do, and then realize too that, again, you're not the show. Like, I'm not the show. I'm here to get them ready to play, but I want them to be overly prepared. And like you said, it's, you know, God bless them. I hope they can walk around and jog around on the field. I don't need to worry about that. I need to worry about when they're, you know, putting their foot in the ground and, you know, they're going to change direction aggressively, or they're going to step on the gas and they're going to rip off that 30-yard game-changing run. Make sure they're ready for that, right? Not, you know, the other, that the sub-maximal stuff is, I think they're, for the most part, safe. And again, we know, again, with multiple birds, one stone sort of mantra there, if they're ready, you know, if they're ready to deal with the force and stress at that high end, then, you know, the majority of that low end, which comprises, like, most of the game, are fine. They're gonna be okay. Life's easier.
Chris, this discussion kind of reminds me of the talks that we've had about cross country, where these cross country coaches want to argue against speed training on a regular basis, because they say that cross country is 98% aerobic, and that's where our practice should be. And you want to touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, I think it's the same argument with soccer, that, oh, great, that's at 98%. But when it comes down to it, like at the end of a cross country race or a breakaway in soccer, even though you're dribbling the ball, you still have to have that burst. You're creating that ceiling that you can get there. If you never train at that intensity, you're never going to get it in a game. And the more you increase that ceiling, the easier it's going to be to get there. And the more you can do, the easier it's going to be to run around for 90 minutes or however long you're playing for in any of your races or any of the aerobic things. So it's the same argument. And I think people just get stuck on it because they don't know how to train speed. And so it's much easier to just have a team that's in really good shape. And then you can say, well, the speed's born, you know, that's what we know and all that. And I think every coach fears having a team that someone may claim that they're not in shape, you know, because that's one thing you can control as a coach. But again, their idea of what in shape isn't really what it should be. I won't use names, but I had a group of girls that were training here together. I have 2 girls that were in high school and 1 girl who is a Division I soccer player, and she's pretty good. I won't say where she goes to school or anything like that. And it was her first time coming back. Her first time she's trained with you. I trained her brother. Her dad said, can she show up? She needs some work, blah, 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 blah. And I said, sure, she can come. So the two girls that I had here beforehand, I've trained for a while. They're pretty studly. And so we went through.
I think I know it, Chris. I think I know where this is headed.
The two girls, sophomores in high school. We did some vertical jump stuff. The two sophomores in high school both jumped 29.4 and 29.6, which is a really good jump.
That's
studly
unreal, right? Yeah.
The Division I player, 19.7, 19.8 on it. She hit one good one at 20.2.
Yeah. And if I could expound upon that for just a little bit, if that I have to comment on this because we are in a veritable soccer factory, and that's what we do because we focus so much on development and we don't really chase results. Our kids off the end of the bench are going to top 25 programs. So they go to these strength conditioning programs, and apparently it's literal compliance. It's strength and conditioning. I will give them credit. They are stronger. They look different. They come back. They're fit. Apparently, again, a different type of fit. But there is no bounce. There is no twitch. Everything that they worked on with me is gone, and they're getting smoked by the academy kids when they come back in from break.
And that's
every single time.
They said, what do you guys do?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to embarrass her or anything like that.
Right.
What do you guys do? Because you've got a strength coach and they're accountable. And she said, well, we do a lot of conditioning and then we lift. And she had some pretty developed quads and that was it. And she goes, we do squat, we do deadlift, and we do some cleans. And
don't forget the 6 a.m. stadium run and the 5 mile while they're half asleep still.
Yeah. She goes, that's why I'm here, is because I'm not going to be back in school for a while. And I know this is what I'm lacking. And we all come in and we get slower and we get hurt.
Yeah.
It almost seems like, well, I made a comment one time that JT Ayers in our podcast remembered that I told parents, don't let your little kids play soccer. Plus, you'll turn them into a professional jogger. And he thought it was the funniest thing ever because all 4 of his kids were signed up for soccer.
Right.
But it's almost like the game of soccer itself, with 9 miles of 50% or less of max speed running, actually detrains fast twitch, and detrains explosiveness, and detrains sprinting. So the thing that the game itself detrains is the exact stuff that you want to take care of.
Right, exactly. And that was, again, I said to Chris, I am purely supplemental. So I must fill in the gaps, period. There's no way around it. Also too, from just an injury standpoint, if we want to go beyond, giving them what they don't get, because I need them to, first and foremost, particularly at these young ages, become an athlete, period. Right. What some of our young kids are capable of is astounding. And I am proud to say that they are not soccer athletes or athletes within the context of soccer. These are bona fide athletes, right? They're, I've got girls, running over 20 miles an hour, we got 3 in the national team system right now, one of which just came back. It was actually the one on the video. She came back from England on the U16 youth national team this summer. So, and then she's a North Carolina Tar Heel commit, the legendary Anson Dorrance down there, which makes me quite proud because I'm a huge Tar Heel fan, if you've ever seen my Twitter page. So, I hang my hat on making them athletes first. So I have to give them what they're not getting. And the same thing holds true for, the strength work that I have them do, because of the anterior dominant nature of the game. the quad dominant nature, and the hip, I must get after the lower back, the glutes, the hamstrings. So, and that's actually what led me to finally embracing a couple years ago, sprinting at a higher level. Was I had such good results with the young kids early, erroneously just having them squat and deadlift, and because I was having them do more of that than sprint, but I got good results because honestly, that filled in huge gaps. They did zero strength training. They had, they had zero capability to produce any force, let alone, demonstrate it quickly. So by merely making them strong at a young age, that solved a lot. And then I started to kind of realize, all right, well, this is good, but now they're kind of getting better, but like the bar is kind of stagnating here within the academy. It's still way better than, competing against, the Ethiopian distance team that on the other team. but I was like, how do I make my athletes better? And I started to kind of realize that, again, the speed was really the answer. And, I was letting the tail wag the dog for too long there in my come up. And then I started to realize that it was the other way around. The speed is what really drives the everything else, not the opposite.
You mentioned miles per hour just a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like not only do you measure speed, and you're a free lap guy.
Yeah.
It's your best friend, you said.
Yeah, yes.
It means we can be really good friends for life.
Right.
That free lap and miles per hour, and you record times that even when kids are not racing, they're still competing.
Yes.
And one of the things that you mentioned, which I don't even know if you remember saying it in your presentation, which might be the most important thing you said, is that they love it.
Yeah.
I mean, we are really good at what we love. And it sounds like your kids love your training.
Yeah. So, and that kind of harkens back to, my initial answer, I think, to Chris, when, how do you sell the kid? They just like to, compete. When you have really ambitious young kids, and I'm blessed with that because we get the best of the best in our system. We truly do. So we pump out some extraordinarily high talent, and at anything they want to compete with each other. So again, whether it's a broad jump, a squat, a sprint, a fly 10, an acceleration, as soon as you throw in some capability of quantifying or measuring or, establishing their standard against someone else's, it takes care of itself then. So they're ready to rock and roll. And two, I'm going to say this because of the nature of soccer itself. Soccer is admittedly extraordinarily subjective, right? It's not right. It's not like
Totally unmeasured, right?
Right. It's not like baseball. It's not like baseball where we have just tons and tons of crazy deep analytics and we're going to shift and ruin the game and no one's ever going to score, right? Like you have every possible stat for any scenario you can imagine. Soccer is 2-1. That means there were 3 goals and potentially maybe they were unassisted too. So what kind of stats do we have? Now we're trying and we're reaching for things like connecting passes, and you'll see that, like distance traveled. And don't get that twisted one little bit either too, because people be like, oh, well, my kid GPS he went further than the other kid. Yeah, well, he's also probably, you know, egregiously inefficient. There's no reason to do that, right? You know, you look at like, and here's a great example, right? For people, and I know I'm not really talking to soccer guys, but God bless them. Tony Bradley, and Michael Bradley, he patrolled the center midfield, and he was known. He actually went and played over in Europe for AS Roma and in the Italian Serie A, and he was starting center midfielder for the U.S. men's national team for years, and he was known as like one of those guys who would just crazily out like work everyone else. And you'd like look at his GPS and be like, whoa, man, like he went further than anyone else in the world, but he doesn't really do or create. Where Pirlo at the time would literally smoke a cigarette at halftime, look at his heat map, he wouldn't go anywhere, and in one play change the game. Well, what's more valuable? You see what I'm saying? Like, so, you know, again, some of these stats that we're trying to conjure up now are just honestly BS, right? They don't even mean anything. It's just like whatever. So soccer is subjective. We have 2 goals. The person who scores gets all the glory, like, hey, and there's huge value in that, but everyone else matters. So like, how do we quantify that? So we don't. It's like often it boils down to in front of the technical coach, like, hey, I think you're better than the other person, but there's not much of a huge difference. I mean, obviously the Messis and the Ronaldos are going to stick out like a sore thumb, but that's the upper 0.0001%. Everyone else is kind of like, sort of interchangeable. And that's not too dissimilar to, you know, the league that we play in. If you want me to give you a distinction between USL Championship, the league that the Riverhounds play in, and the MLS, the only difference is truly the top 2 roster spots. That's it. That is it. So yeah, LA Galaxy, they'll have that big money to bring over David Beckham or Steven Gerrard at the end of their careers, or Zlatan. Remember that guy with the bow tie and the hair? He was a hoot, right? He'd be on SportsCenter dropping hits and saying this, and you know, speaking about himself in third person. You know, yeah, they have the money at that top spot, but that's it. That's the only difference. The other guys are interchangeable, really, to be honest. So just to make that clear. But yeah, I mean, it was a way to objectify the kids. You know, the kids love being objectified. They love having a value. Like, hey, did I improve? You know, this session I'm running this session I'm running this, boom, I popped. You know, now I'm running this. Oh, it's refreshing to them, right? You know, that which gets measured gets improved, and there's an innate kind of drive within us, I think, just as human beings, to see improvement. You know, I think Apple has kind of capitalized on that with the Apple Watch and just the Apple Health. Hey, like, how many steps you take today? Hey, you know, took more steps than last week. All right, yeah, let's keep at it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter who you are. If you're an adult, just kind of, you know, trucking around, like, that's pretty cool. You know, I'd imagine too, maybe it's like, I think my sister told me she took hers off because it was becoming like psychologically like a deterrent, because it's like you're taking less steps. What the hell's wrong with you? Like, you're taking less steps. Like, you're like, come on, let's get up, let's go. So I guess it could work the opposite too, but that's just kind of managing the psychology.
We got a couple questions. Thoroughly love Mike's content. Are you familiar with RPR, and does he use the VMAX Pro at all with his athletes? Because I see he uses it often with himself. Yeah.
So RPR, I know that. Well, I'm a big fan of Cal, and I'm not as familiar with it, so I don't like to comment on things that I am not. I am obsessed with the VMAX Pro, so velocity tracking. I have my athletes, my elite athletes. In fact, little known fact here, and I know I sent over what it wound up being, 71 minutes, Tony, in my actual presentation. I edited out Tessa's the girl who brilliantly demonstrated how I kind of go about the agility development there. I edited out her whole lifting session. I did a whole lifting session with VMAX Pro and chains for accommodating resistance, and it was just getting too long. I was losing track of, you know, what the thing was at that point. But yes, at the upper end in like a private type setting, I have my athletes. Yes, I monitor bar. I value the speed of the bar more than the load. And there's certain mean velocities that I'm trying to hit, and certain qualities I'm trying to look at in terms of, you know, for max force, for rate of force. And then even I love the thing that I've found great value in with velocity based training is I can tease out those subtle nuances in regards to, you know, like speed strength, like what is 30%, what is 40%? Like we kind of guess, but like you don't really know until you can kind of track it. And it's the VMAX Pro too is fantastic because it gives you bar path and spatial orientation, and not all hardware are capable of doing that. They'll just kind of give you velocity, and that's it. And God bless them, that there's value to that. But the VMAX Pro will give you bar path too, so you can see like efficiency and how movements are becoming more refined over time too. Yes, I do, but not in huge group settings by any means. That's going to be too arduous.
What are your main KPIs that you use to measure objectivity throughout your organization, 8-year-old to pros?
8-year-old, well, the pros, honestly, I would say just we'll keep this simple here. The fly 10, the 30-yard acceleration, 30-yard acceleration, broad jump, vertical jump, and am I missing anything here? No, that's it. Those are kind of the big ones. So
is there anything in the weight room that's a KPI? You know, like one of the things I love to ask Chris, and he's so good at this, like what things are the really good guys good at?
Right.
Anything in the weight room? Because usually I struggle with that question.
Yeah. I used to value it a lot more. Right now, I see if you can like trap bar deadlift close to about triple your body weight, and if you can back squat close to double your body weight, you're gonna be able to do pretty much just about anything I'm gonna ask of you in regards to sprint. Like it just, and that's a very broad blanket, but I've never met anyone. And that's okay. In that regard, then too, if you can, as a guy, do 10 strict chin ups, strict, not this kipping garbage. And if you're a female and you can do like 5 or 6, if you can, squat close to, again, that magic, and everyone, S&C, they love the squat, squatting. If you can squat double body weight, if you can pull trap bar close to triple body weight, and if you relative strength, regards to relative strength, if you can, do 10 strict, chins as a guy. I also like, the other one I really like is I've let pistol squats evolve into skater squats. If you can, really do 10 strict good ones where your knee almost kisses the ground and you're in complete control, keep tension on your back and everything on both legs, that's enough relative and absolute strength for me. Then you're good.
It might be a dumb question, but what is a skater squat?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's if a skater squat is, if you think of like essentially just a single leg squat, the pistol variation is like the legs forward. Think of CrossFit. Yeah.
It's just where your swing leg goes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, for me though, it was like some kids can do it, some kids can't because of, structural limitations and ankle, knee. I'm like, if you can do just a really good single leg squat, like full range of motion, I don't care. Yeah, wherever, like you said, Chris, like I don't care where your swing leg goes, then you're good. That's it. So I needed like a basic understanding of what you're capable of in terms of relative strength and then absolute strength. And let's get you sprinting, right? The quicker we can get you sprinting, the better off we're going to be, because that is such a skill unto itself. And that's probably one of the best gifts I can give them. You know, the delicate dance, that the inter and intramuscular coordination required at velocity is just, it's beautiful, right? You know, I think I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that. But if you can handle that, and I commented on, someone asked a question like, or someone commented on the tweet you sent out, you know, kind of teasing tonight, Tony, about, I think I heard before that, you know, sprinting's the, you know, like the ultimate plyometric, and it is. It really is. So that's the end all be all.
Are you able to work with team coaches to blend what you work on with athletes into specific speed or agility work into a team session? Also, how do you teach the ability to disguise acceleration needed to beat an opponent in an invasion sport? Okay,
so I actually don't. I don't do any of that. That's the beauty in it. Here's the problem with that. We can lose sight very quickly of raising that ceiling. If we start trying to bastardize it and integrate, and you start trying to do speed work within a technical session, you know, if you try to chase two rabbits, you're not going to catch any, right? You know, like, so we separate technical from the speed and strength work, and that's strict. So all I am doing is I am going to make them a better athlete, and that is going to benefit them and leave them more resilient to injury and able to perform at a higher level when they go back into the technical coach. The technical coach then is going to be responsible for, or, you know, whatever tactical sort of acumen they may have, because it's sometimes how you can read the game as well too. And we know that you can have a guy who's a 4-4 guy, and you know that he can't, like, he just doesn't click quick enough. And you have the intuitive guy who's 4-7, right? Who's like, he always seems to be in the right spot at the right time. He appears to be faster, but, you know, you actually, you know, with combine data, he's like, you're not, you know. You can't coach that necessarily, but yeah, it's up to the technical coach to get them moving with newfound, you know, explosive capabilities at a higher level. They use that however they want. I'm giving them tools in the toolbox. You go use it. If we start trying to blend and get cute, it ain't gonna work out. That's experience too. That's not me taking a stab in the dark. I'm telling you, you don't want. And I see all these like busy drills sometimes where you got athletes, you know, like I'm gonna. Like these Spark commercials where they got like bands on and they're like trying to sprint and they're kicking a ball, and then they like run around a cone and they kick a ball, and then they're like standing there doing speed work in between. No, you're not recovering enough. You're not focusing. You're not driving enough intent. And likewise with the actual technical work you're doing on the ball, it's like this somewhere in between. Have you raised the ceiling on your technical capacity, and have you raised the ceiling on your speed and your maximum output capacity? And the answer to both those questions is no. Keep it separate. I would strongly push back against any of that. And I don't worry about trying to disguise. That's innate within them. They're going to have to. That's the Messi and the Ronaldo. They're going to have to figure that out on their own. But they do that by maintaining the appropriate separation, right? They have to. This is 100% true. Again, you can't put two, and you can't blend them. You gotta keep them separate. So they have to work on that skill on their own, and that's again why there's so much value in the sprinting. We'll go back to the beginning, because I need to need to get them, and I said it in my presentation, I need to get them ready as quick as possible. And I need to have exercises prepared, stressors prepared that deliver the biggest bang for the buck, so they can go practice being able to disguise. And that's going to look different for everyone, because, you know, people are built differently, people look differently, people move differently. So what may be effective for one is not going to be effective for another, just because maybe how they're built, you know, like, so all these, there's so many different confounding variables. Work on each one separately, get better at each individual one.
I wanted to mention, going back to your quantified approach to speed and strength training. There's a book written by Jeff Hayden called The Motivation Myth. And it's a great book, but really it could have been done in 2 pages. And but it's one of those books that I'll never forget. But I was like, yeah, yes. So anyway, so you don't have to read it. Basically, all he said was that all this shit that coaches believe is motivation is very shallow. That we all think that motivation is a motivating talk by a coach.
Oh,
And that gets, you know, that we are constantly providing motivation for kids. And his thesis is that motivation only comes from success. That as a coach, what we have to do is put kids in a position to be successful and show them that success. And so your point, the reason why I felt like I had to bring this up, your point that soccer does not give much more than, you know, a pat on the back that I played well, leaves those soccer athletes starving for objectified, quantified stuff. And so that's your motivation.
Yeah. And that's why they love training with me. Yeah. That it truly is why. And then conversely, it's equally as demoralizing when they don't come off the bench and they have no apparent reason why. Well, why? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't I mean, you talk about psychologically damaging to a 13-year-old. Like, wait a second. There's nothing to really substantiate why I'm not better than Christian, who's out there every second. But whereas what we do on either the track or what I do on the turf or in the gym, because it's objectified, it's the ultimate meritocracy, right? You sink or swim based on your own abilities, right? All right. I put up every day when on the times, you know, that I do have, you know, a large enough sample size, we'll say, and have them compete, you know, my Hounds Academy daily top 5, free lap top 5, you know. You either get there or you don't, you know, like that's on you. Like that's you're running the same standards that everyone else is. So if you're not getting, you know, if you're not getting faster and you're not, and so is, and they're doing 2 or 3 sessions a week and you're coming once every 2 weeks, well.
And the beautiful thing is,
right?
you may never be top 3.
Right.
But I have found the slowest kids will often improve on a regular basis, will improve the most, which once again gives those kids something to look forward to, that motivation, that love, and all that stuff. And if we keep them hanging on, maybe they become a better soccer player.
And it's not even just that. Yeah, it's not even that everyone gets objective data. So like everyone's seeing improvement. So it's like, but they understand why, and they see, you know, if their improvement's not what they want it to be, there's a roadmap. There's a blue, like that's what anyone ever, I think most people too, for, you know, from a motivating standpoint, you know, success breeds success to exactly what you said, most certainly. In a weird way that, you know, I have experienced that. You know, I went into, you know, my first semester in college as a biology major, I worked hard, and I always have, but I happened into a 4.0. and from that point on, I was deathly afraid of losing it. So I graduated with a 3.98.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
I have almost the exact same story. I won an award as a freshman in high school as the top student in my freshman class.
Right.
That was the most motivating thing in my academic life.
Yeah.
I wanted to be number one. I graduated number 4, and I was pissed off. I'm pissed off to this day I wasn't number 1.
Well, yeah, and that was to that end, I was really upset because the only I thought at the end I was gonna be like valedictorian from my little, and I was like, it was actually like there were like 2 kids that had like 4.0s with BAs. God bless, art majors. You know what I mean? I was like, again, here we go with this subject. Come on, Tony, like you're a science guy too, like OChem physics, biochem, you've run the gauntlet, all these 1-credit labs too. You're on the bus. I'm coming back from soccer games. My business major friends are like carrying on, in the back of the bus, and I'm like trying to write a lab report. I'm like, shut the hell up, I'm like yelling their back, I'm like, you have no idea, like these 1-credit courses are way harder than the lectures. How dare you? It's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, holding on for dear life. And then at the end of the day, I'm like waiting there. I'm like, all right, 3.98. All right, who's gonna beat this? And then it's like, oh yeah, there's like 2 thespians, and I love thespians, of course. There was something like that that like sneak in there. I'm like, oh man, but no, to your point, like I had no idea what to expect when I went in that first semester, and I was like, I want to do well. I'm going to do my best. But then like once I got it, it was like, all right, well, how do we do it even better? Right. It was like, yeah, the same thing. I was like, so, success breeds success, most certainly. So that is a critical thing. You want to put them in situations that they can do that too. And that also kind of goes back to what you have said and what I agree with. Don't let today ruin tomorrow. If you do that, if you're ruining little kids today's, they're coming back tomorrow. Their motivation to come back is not. So you always want to leave them. You want to leave them feeling good. And I guess that's maybe a little bit of the psychology and the coaching there too. But the last thing they remember is favorable, not bad.
I was going to ask you, one of the things I tweeted out from Cal Dietz's talk, his presentation, he said that he was talking about specifically hockey, I believe, but he said that conditioning must mimic violence, speed, blah, blah, blah. It was a great quote of his, of the game that you're trying to play. Yeah. And it was interesting. You got, oh, it's the most awesome, Cal's the greatest and everything.
Yeah. I mean, but like for me, because I read his triphasic, and that is like the underpinnings of a lot of the strength work I do, the eccentric, the isometric, the concentric work. And I'm like, he's presenting you to him. It's amazing.
There was one guy, a guy from Ireland, who was an S&C guy for Gaelic football. And it's similar to hockey. It's a weird game, but anyway. But he said I'd like to politely disagree that you can't do that. You cannot mimic the high intensity stuff of a game, because he says if conditioning mimics the sport, the wear and tear will cripple us. Instead, we must increase capacity. And there's many different ways to condition. And he's basically making that argument that I think you and I both have heard many times, that we need to do tempo runs because high speed stuff is going to make them get injured or just cripple us. Don't you see that a lot, don't you? Or hear about people saying things like that?
Yeah. Still far too often, even at large clubs. And again, I think Chris touched on it earlier too. I think it's just an excuse that they don't know how to really develop the top end, and they fear it. I mean, it's human. That's human nature too, is it not? Right? You fear what you truly don't understand or know. So there is, like, you think of these, draw analogies to these athletes, with, these chassis with engines. I don't want to, dehumanize them, but, if you don't know how to really build that engine to, from a 4-cylinder to a 6 or an 8, it's a little bit dangerous, isn't it? Right? Like, you're like, I don't know. Let's stick to what's comfortable. Let's stick to what we know. This is what we were doing. And, that's the big thing that I see a lot too, maybe even specify even a little more in the soccer culture, in regards to, we'll say, traditional development. And one of your first question you asked me, a lot of these guys are falling back onto what they did when they were coming up, when they played collegiately, when they played professionally in the 80s, in the 90s. Now, in 2020, or just in any facet of life, and if you're not improving at the speed of light, you're falling behind. So if you're going back and you're resting on things that you had done in the past, and you're building your future based on the past, you're going backwards. You're not taking steps forward. So we need to do our best to stay in front of everything, right, and to be at the forefront and the cutting edge. At least that's how my brain kind of operates. So that's it. So that's it. There are a bunch of technically really gifted guys that have never really been taught how to be athletes. So that's kind of what my job is, right?
Yeah. Well, this brings, we can't go the whole talk without mentioning David Montgomery, Chris. That
today, yeah.
Did you see that run, Chris, today?
Top. I'm just
80 yards.
Just texting with him.
Get him in your. Make sure he's in your fantasy lineup. That was a big question before the game. Do you play David Montgomery today?
20.33 miles per hour, his fastest ever recorded. And I will never forget what Chris told me last summer when he was training. Didn't Montgomery say that he had never truly been speed trained?
Yeah. Oh, he ran track in high school, but he was a thrower that ran the 4x1 and 4x2.
And a lot of people assume that if you're on a track team, that you are sprint trained. I would say probably 60% of all high school track teams just run. They really do not sprint train. And so this is not just a soccer problem. I mean, running back in American football is a sprint.
Yeah.
Position. And to think that somebody had enough left in them that Chris Gorfus could improve him by 1.1 mile an hour in an 8-week period is just astonishing to me. So this is not just soccer. This goes everywhere.
Right. And it's prevalent. I didn't realize, I always operated under the assumption that if you were a track athlete, you were flying. Like, I was just blown away. I was blown away, Tony, that, when I start talking about, like I mentioned, I'm a stickler for positions and ground contacts and quality, intent and all of these type of things. These athletes had never experienced that. Like, they didn't know what an A march was, an A skip. I'm like, you're you run the 100 meters for your school. You don't know what an A skip is? Like, what are you doing? Like no offense to like, but what are you doing? what do you do when you go there? Like, how do you not know these basic things? These like the basic tenets, like simple dribble progressions, like ankling and like what like I don't understand.
They run laps.
Yeah, apparently.
Tyler Rathke asks, who are other professionals in the soccer performance sector who you talk with about training or like the way they approach training?
Honestly, I don't really interface that much. How's that?
Is there anybody that's like you? No, there's nobody like you for sure. But is there anybody that you know of that has a similar approach?
I'm racking my brain. I can't really immediately think of anyone because honestly, it's in the youth game, I'm essentially like a unicorn because like our club, most clubs don't even have a strength and conditioning coach or a performance coach. So that is super few and far between. But, and again, I don't want to,
that'll be season 2 of Ted Lasso where they bring in a strength coach.
From what I've seen from MLS programs, it's all about mitigating injury by never exposing them to anything that is dangerous.
That's what somebody said today on Twitter, is that professional or NFL S&C people are not there to improve speed or maintain speed. It is simply to keep guys from getting injured, which I just like shook my head, like really.
Right. And in doing so, yeah.
Is a soccer coach implementing speed training with his team on a real tight budget? I'm hoping to upgrade to the free lap, but don't have 2,000 by 10 plus chips. What is the minimum number of timing chips you would suggest for a 20-player squad? Honestly, any of us can answer.
Yeah. I'll let you guys kind of go first. But I honestly, if you have two cones and if you have 3 or 4 chips, you make sure they get their ass back in line. You know what I mean? like that. That's it. You don't need anything beyond that. You don't need an elaborate amount. At all. And then 2, the other thing is you need to, as a coach, I am. Okay. The cool thing about obviously pure speed work is, and to this point now, because of the years of results, we'll say, I think I mentioned this in my presentation. I don't get really questioned that much anymore. So you obviously need full recoveries to really demonstrate at a high level, not often completely pragmatic. So, obviously the 1 minute per, 10 meters / 10 yards is great in theory. In the team setting, you got to kind of tweak it a little bit. But when you start layering in, appropriate, tasteful recoveries with chips, and then if you intertwine the testing within, I'll say, the training, so that they get like really good speed work, and then maybe you test like 2 reps, you slow it down, and then you really let that recovery, kind of demonstrate itself. You can 20 kids, you can honestly do it with 3 chips. Because I remember there was a period of time where I was doing like groups of 15 with 3 chips, no problem, and that wasn't grinding to a halt of any sort. You just have to be very judicious, and you need to do your homework for sure. Make sure you're prepared.
One of the things in your presentation that I thought was really interesting was the very strong distinction you made between agility and change of direction.
Yes.
You want to go through that for people that maybe haven't seen your presentation yet?
Yes. So change of direction is choreographed, right? You have it's essentially an established dance, right? So when you think of your typical change of direction drill, let's just use the traditional 5-10-5, right? 5 yards to the right, 10 yards back to the left, 5 yards through. It's a great test of your ability to accelerate, decelerate, and change direction. Agility, however, is you're responding to a constantly changing environment within the game too. So you're accelerating, decelerating based off of this moving, ever-changing environment. So there's a perception. There's a dynamic there that requires you to react, right? That is lost in the choreographed change of direction. So, the value is at young ages, let's teach the basics of how to accelerate, decelerate, and then, reapply force in a different direction using change of direction. Good, right? And then as they mature and they get more advanced, let's start letting that naturally evolve into just more agility, right? So, and the best way to kind of go about developing agility is, and you'll see in the video for those who haven't seen it, is I have my athletes get strong in a very traditional way. They do a lot of unilateral strengthening. We do a tremendous amount of isometric and eccentric work to allow them to prepare the soft tissue. And then we do a lot of hard deceleration. So altitude landings, things of that nature, particularly on one leg. So I'm really exposing them to higher and, and again, they do nothing that they're not prepared for. So higher and higher levels of force. That's all I'm trying to, and higher and higher degrees of stress, really. So that when they're again, dropped within the context of the game, they're ready to rock and roll. But agility versus change directions, choreographed, and agility is you're always constantly reacting to a changing dynamic within the environment that's shifting around you.
I love that. There's one other thing. The thing that impressed me, of course, what I'm doing is typically linear speed.
Sure.
Like we're always going north,
Right.
But then again, I explained that in our X Factor stuff, and the reason why I do this is pretty organic, and that is just because I learned that basketball players who came out from my track team never got injured.
Right.
The most durable athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we try to do in our X Factor stuff is, yes, we do plyos and we do range of motion stuff and we do,
right.
But we do a lot of things that try to mimic basketball type of stuff, which is multi-directional, plyometric,
right,
explosive type stuff. And that's probably the thing that I gained more from your talk than anything else is a lot of the single-legged lateral things.
Mm-hmm.
That you
yes, yeah,
seem to be like one of your favorite things.
Yeah. So and I actually I gotta feel I have to actually plug my last article I wrote for Simply Faster on building better bounce, and I cannot tell of how much I love lateral and transverse. So we'll say frontal plane and transverse plane. So rotational and lateral single leg plyos, because the instant we do that, we increase glute med and we increase core strength. And again, we talk about bang for the buck, Tony, right? I'm not putting them on the ground in the traditional crunch, right? So when you start talking about increasing demands on these critical muscles, right, that are going to, really stimulate the high degrees of stability and health within the athlete, I can do that without doing the slow band walks, right? They're great. There's value in that. Again, I'm not devaluing anything. I'm saying that once they're prepared, let's keep cranking up the stress and force in our preparation so that they're overly prepared when they go to the field. You can tastefully do all of this without injuring them, right? Again, you just have to have a little bit of class. But yeah, the lateral and the rotational type single leg work, so much proprioception, so much core strength already layered into that movement. You're going bang, 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 bang. You're killing so many different things there. And two, just like if you are, want to experience it yourself, start doing, traditional, like marches and skips. Do your A skips laterally. And then you tell me how tiring that gets real fast. Compared, you can do A skips, strike the ground well for, 30 meters. You try doing that laterally and maintain that same cadence. Have fun. It's like that subtle difference. You'll feel exactly what I'm talking about in terms of organizing, like the pelvis, stacking that rib cage right over top of the pelvis and maintaining those good quality ground contacts. The beauty's in the subtlety there, right?
Yeah, my brain can't even picture a lateral A skip.
Yeah, it's. I tell you what, it'll wake you up. Say, I will say that it is fantastic for immediately switching you on, because that's the one thing I found when you start talking about, PR cheats, right? For, getting the athletes on the jump pad. Love the just jump pad too. It's like a launch pad. If you, slow cook, extensive ground contacts, like little tiny bounces, and you slowly intensify with a lot of single leg, multi-directional plyos, and you layer in some good quality decelerations. And then the big one is joint specific isometrics, right? For specifically the extensors of the ankle, the knee, not even so much the hip, because the hip's getting a lot just through the bounce, right? If you really do like Cal loves his spring ankle complex, right? Love that, like that isometric position there, and you really work the soleus muscle. The calves get all the love, but the soleus takes all the load, because as an athlete, your knees are most frequently bent, right? They're not fully extended. And then the VMO, that little teardrop on the inside of the quad, because so often in strength and conditioning, we trace, like when we squat, we chase glutes, hammies. But let's not lose sight of the fact that, the ankles and the knees are also, they need to be conditioned as well, because they're also responsible for a lot of propulsive, juice. So, you go, multi-directional single leg bounce, some isos and some eccentrics. Ooh, that proprioception and that nervous system is on fire. And then you drop them back on two legs about 15, 20 minutes later, after you kind of slowly crank up some force. Boom. PRs, vert. They're just bouncing around, you know what I mean? And conversely, did it in 10 to 15 minutes, it's a great warm-up before a game. They're flying off the game. Like our teams are never going to come out flat.
Love it. Chris, you don't know anything about that spring ankle stuff, do you?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Forget
about. This may be the last question I've written down. You love the isometric holds. Mm-hmm. And I remember you showed the one with the girl laying flat, shoulders are on a bench.
Yes.
One leg down, one leg up, and like
glute. Yeah, single leg glute bridge, right?
And how long you call that single leg glute bridge?
Glute bridge, yes, glute bridge.
And
yes.
How long did she hold it?
I try not to, when we start talking about isometrics, I try not to go beyond about 15 seconds. There's no value in do it. Like I love the kid, like I planned for 3 minutes. Great. Increase the intensity, right? If you are capable of demonstrating the positions that I want and creating the tension, because it's not, the thing is, you can hold a kinematic shape and not do a damn thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of just hold that position to truly, and I tell the kids, to truly actually get what we want out of it, you need to be, pardon my French, you need to be close to damn near cramping. You're engaging every part of your musculature to that point, right? And if you do your job, you're going to do it in, 10 to 15 seconds tops. All right, we got it. You're holding the position. You're strong enough. Fantastic. Let's start loading that position. Let's lay some weights, some sandbags, some chains, across those, that's the next step. And let's start progressing from there. So in any endeavor, and for me, it's about, and this goes into raising the ceiling. Let's crank up the intensity. Let's not crank up the volume.
What are a couple other of your favorite isometric holds?
A lot of single leg lunge positions, holding the bottom. I want to get them low squat too. I want to get them, again, in a supplemental type way. Let's get them strong where they are weak. Louis Simmons, right? Let's work on getting those weaknesses up to par. You'll see a lot of, young athletes in general. They don't want to do what? They don't want to bend at the waist. They don't want to bend at the knees, right? They just want to they just don't squat. All right, that's fine. We're going to solve this. I'm going to make you love being down in that bottom position, right? So we're going to hold, the bottom of the isometric lunge and squat all day until you love it, right? It's like I happen to love vegetables. If you've ever seen my Twitter, I know some people don't, but I'm going to make, that's for my young athletes, that is their steady dose of vegetables. We're going to make you get really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the cool thing here is, for everyone out there in the audience, isometrics, right? We're not getting that eccentric damage. So you're not going to wake up the next day smoked. We can go to that well a lot. And it's a great way to develop strength within about 10 to 15 degrees of that specific joint angle. So it is a good way to, I think I comment on it during the presentation, when they're younger, we think more globally. And then when they're older, specifically, that's, where we start trying to hit joint angles that are more, that they'll actually hit within the game.
And Chris, you like that for teams in season, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just because you have to replace what's lost in the season, and isometric strength seems to be the first thing that goes.
Yes. Yep. 100% agreed.
Chris, are there any more questions that we missed?
Related to agility, do you implement drills that are game-like, or do you focus on the underpinning skills with jumps, plyo, strength work, and let the soccer take care of the reactive component?
Again, yeah, for the most part, I let soccer take care of the reactive component. I didn't, in the video, I edited it out too, but I actually had Tessa do some reactive depth jumps. So where she was falling, she had to react to my either visual or audible cue of head this direction, head that. So she has to, there is, but it's super simplistic, right? We don't want to overcomplicate what I'm trying. I want to give them and expose them to the highest level of stress possible, so that they're the most prepared. And then the subtlety and nuance of the game that'll be taken care of through the technical, the tactical, and the competitive element.
Mike, you've been a great guest.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity to represent the soccer world. So it's my job to I guess spread the word. And again, I think I said it a couple of times, show what they can be. They don't have to be the cliche. They are not. They're not everywhere, mostly, but if we keep doing things of this nature and just educating and doing what I love to do and teach, then we'll keep getting the word out. So that is my goal. Let's keep raising the bar of training as well too, because this is a heck of a platform in which to do so. So again, Tony and Chris, thank you for having me and being such great hosts and allowing me to share.
Well, I probably like soccer right now more than I ever have.
Oh, hey, I guess I must have done my job a little bit, right?